all right, let's do it. Top 10 things that I've read this year, not ranked. I couldn't do it. I stared at it and I stopped. I couldn't do it. We will start with an honorable mention. I don't know for sure. I'm only 67% of the way through this massive book. But Wind and Truth would probably be on this list if I made this list after I read it. I don't want to. And like I said in my surprises video, it kind of brings me joy that I don't have to think about it as, is this a best book of the year? But I'm having a very good time. And it's meeting my expectations for one of my favorite series of all times. So yeah. But let's get into the things that I have read. I have 10 things. And I have a whole range of stuff here. Like, whole range of genres. And yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. So let us start with my T. Kingfisher, because as I have said, she has made it to every list. She was on surprises, she was on disappointments, and now here she is at the best of. And no one knows what it's going to be. It's Jackal Up Wives. I read this at the start of the year. I read this back in January. It brought me an absurd amount of joy. So much joy. And we were stressed. In January, our lives are a little stressful. We had just moved. I hadn't started my new job yet. Ryan was still unemployed. We were... you try and just live every day without thinking about all the really depressing stuff, but it's just like, we were exhausted. We were tired. And this book, I just started picking up because I just had it, and I was just like, I'm just going to read a story. And it just swept me away. So T. Kingfisher does a couple different types of storytelling that I have experienced. I haven't read everything by her. I haven't read her straight horror. I haven't read her young adult or middle grade. But in the adult oeuvre that I have read, she does old ladies. She does naive young girls, she does weird American folk tales adjacent things, and she does fairy tale retellings, and she does creepy cozy things. And all of those things exist in this short story collection, and it's amazing. Like, if you want, like, weird Southwest America fantasy folk stuff, it was so good. I want a whole universe with these two stories with this old lady. She writes old ladies so well. Oh, I love how T. Kingfisher writes middle-aged to old women. It's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing. But there were fairy tale retellings. It had all the stuff I like about her works. So I would honestly say this is a good taste testing of T. Kingfisher. But like what I remember now, 12 months after reading this, is just the joy. Just the simple escapist joy of picking this up and reading a story. And I met T. Kingfisher as like a reader. I haven't met her in real life yet, but maybe one day. Was through a short story. And I was instantly captivated by the fact that, like, man, I'm already caring about these characters. Like, she is so efficient in giving me buy-in to a scenario. And this just reminded me so much of how much I love T. Kingfisher's brain and what she plays with and how she writes funny things. Like, the opening to it just felt like a friend was chatting with me. Like, I just feel like I'm just being told a story by a close friend when I read T. Kingfisher, and nothing felt more like that than reading Jackal Up Wives. So I highly, highly recommend it. Next up, let us discuss, and like when I've read a lot of series this year, and I'm going to have, in January, we're going to talk about my state of series, because I just was like overwhelmed in December, and I was like, I can't touch this yet. But when I have read series, I'm going to just talk about them on this list and just pick my favorite book in the series because, like, it makes my life easier. And I guess I didn't say at the top of this video, these are 10 new things. So these are, like, 10 books that I haven't read before because I've done a lot of rereading this year and, like, I'm not putting that in my 10 best of. All right, so this is one of the first series, though. And this is the Angel of Indian Lake Trilogy. Is that what it's called? Or is it the Indian Lake Trilogy? Regardless, my favorite book is Don't Fear the Reaper. Really, really loved reading Don't Fear the Reaper. Because I read Don't Fear the Reaper and The Angel of Indian Lake this year. And both are solid. The whole trilogy is art. Like, love it. I have a should you read for it if you want more thoughts on that series. Don't Fear the Reaper was just such a campy, good time for me. I love the mixed media. I love how it keeps you on your toes. Like, you feel like you should know who's doing the slashing, but do you know who's doing the slashing? And you feel like you know your characters shouldn't do the dumb thing, and your characters know they shouldn't do the dumb thing, but do they still do the dumb thing? And I also just have this memory of working out on my mom's elliptical while happening to read the climax of the story in that exact amount of time, and it was just euphoric. I was just like, and like, but also like, you know, hyperventilating because I was working out, and I was just like, oh, this is crazy. So I love both of them, but Don't Fear the Reaper, both through experience and because I just think it's more fun. The Angel of Indian Lake is heavier. It has to be. You can't avoid that. And there's a lot of strength in it because of that. But in terms of like a fun slasher, especially a fun winter slasher, like it's winter right now. If you've been like, man, I don't know when I want to pick it up. Now is your time. Pick up Don't Fear the Reaper. Oh, it was good. It was good. The next one is the Tera Ignota series, which, I've been raving about all year, currently in the last book. But I can safely say, like, even though I'm really enjoying the last book and I'm excited to see how the series ends and I love the series whole project, nothing has hit quite like the first book to like the lightning. Woo! Woo! I don't normally get the urge to spoiler vlog. When I do, I will, right? Like, that happens. There's a rare book that does, though. Like, the Live Ship Trader series, that's one of the few video series on this channel where you'll have my spoiler-free thoughts and spoiler thoughts on all those books, because I needed to spoiler vlog the minute I was reading Ship of Magic. And the same thing happened with To Like the Lightning. I spoiler vlogged it for my patrons because it was our buddy read, and I just loved exploring this world. This world is so cool. Like, if you are someone who likes to go to weird, cool places, oh my goodness, you must go here. Like, if you read fantasy and science fiction to see new worlds, to see new ways of being, to see new government systems, you must try this, okay? You must. Now, will the writing style work for you? Who is to say? Mycroft, our narrator, he's a little weird. He apparently writes like he's in the 18th or 19th century for some reason, which doesn't actually come across to me, but other people say it does, and it's definitely his intention. Maybe it's the 18th century. Regardless, it works well for me. And also the intrigue of how you're reading this book and the world's on the precipice of something, but you don't know what. That intrigue, that momentum is so good. So yeah, it's not a very character-driven series for me, but the world building, the themes, the ideas, the twists, the turns, it's well done. It's well done. I really love it. And I've loved the community experience of reading it as well. Okay, now we're going to get into my favorite romance of the year. Not surprising, anyone probably, is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I love this book. I read it in 24 hours. It gave me insomnia. That's how good it is. That's how good it is. It kept me up. You probably don't need to know what this is about. This is about two people who always, when they go on dates, the people, when they break up, meet the person they're going to marry. So like, well, let's date each other, and then we'll meet the person we're going to marry. And of course, like, they instantly have chemistry, and like, they're fake dating, but it's not really fake dating. It's more like dating with a time limit, a sort of trope. And they're both really amazing characters that are dealing with their own life traumas. I think the third act breakup is stressful, but exquisite. It's tie-in to the first two books in the series. So fun, kicking my feet. Oh my god, how is this happening? I want to reread the entire series pretty much all the time. I really love how Abby Jimenez writes banter between characters. I'm always laughing when I'm reading the dialogue. I think all the heroes are really lovable. The girls are always kind of a little bit crazy, and in terms of like, get yourself together. You don't have to be this weird. The men are definitely a little more put together in some respects. Oh, but I loved it. I loved it so much. I'm excited for the next one. Whatever it is, even if it's not in this world. I'm just like, she gets me. She paces it well. It's an art to make something this engaging this consistently. Truly. So yeah, had a great time. Content warnings for abandonment issues for sure. And not being able to remain in one place and be committed. That is a big theme in it. Also, content warnings for parents that go to prison, which is definitely for me. I was not expecting to relate to the hero of this book as much as I did. But it's okay. That was a good thing for me. I really find exploring trauma in romances quite cathartic. I know that's not everyone, but for me, it's escapist. It's not my life, it's their life. And I can watch them recover from it and trust that I will also recover, Next up is this my only contemporary? It's not contemporary, it's sort of historical fiction. Is the 90s historical fiction? Tough questions, right, guys? But this is Demon Copperhead. Demon Copperhead. What a book. People weren't kidding. There's a reason why it won like 2 big awards. Wow, I like this book. So it's a retelling of David Copperfield. Never read David Copperfield. I did look at the Wikipedia page. I see the similarities. I think the reasons I like this book is based on the retelling differences and the narrative voice. I've not been convinced that I should go read David Copperfield. Me and Dickens, we don't mesh. We don't get along. At least we didn't when I was in high school. And I've read 2 Dickens now since high school, and Tale of Two Cities was okay. Great Expectations, no. But Tale of Two Cities, that was fine. But anyways, Demon Copperhead. I love the narrative voice. This is another one where I find it cathartic because this character really does go to a low low, but he's telling his story, so you do have the safety net of knowing, well, he's telling me his story. So presumably he's not just a ghost telling me his story. Presumably he's made it out on the other end in some stable capacity. But you do, while you have that safety net, you get to see the lows. Like, there was a moment I, almost cried while driving my car listening to a part, because I was like, what? The world is shit. What is this? It takes place during the peak beginning of the opioid crisis in West Virginia. I think it's West Virginia. It's Appalachia for sure. And if you don't know the history of Appalachian regions in the United States and how they were used for mining and then kind of left behind and not given resources to rebuild and have economies, and they were taken advantage of with the opiate, all of that's interlaced here. You get to learn about it very organically. And our main character is the result of this situation where his mother was not equipped to have the kid she had. And he didn't have a support network when she could no longer support him. And just where it goes and how his relationship to sports and then injury and then drug use and then the one relationship that gives him life. It's this whole thing. And it's tragic. And it's beautiful. And I really enjoy it. I wish the paperback did not have a step back. I saw it in the bookstore this weekend. I wanted to buy it. And here's the crime for this one, okay? I get it. Sometimes it's like, well, it's not that bad. It just adds color. They cut the frame of the cover. The cover I'm showing you here has a beautiful frame. It is illustrated. It is beautiful. They chop off part of it to put in the orange New York Times bestseller inset. It already has, Pulitzer Prize winner on the front. We already know this is a big deal book. It's... Because I would own it. I would own it. I would. I loved it a lot. Anyways, moving on. So Stephen Graham Jones made it twice onto this list because The Only Good Indians was a banger. It was great. I don't recommend it to people as your first horror read, and I think that's kind of what happened to a lot of people in 2020, is a lot of people read The Only Good Indians as their entryway into horror, and I think that maybe wouldn't have been what I recommended, potentially. It's a revenge horror. It's about what happens when you betray the trust of your community. It is short story vignette-y. It is unsettling. It is paced irregularly, but in a way that I love. Its emphasis on community is amazing. I love it. And I love how it interlaces it with the local sports, and the people who stayed local versus who leaves. It's vivid. I know a lot of people don't like the dialogue, but I think that really brings it to life. I loved the audiobook, so I recommend that. But I also really liked physically reading it. It's tailor-made for me. I love horror short stories. This is one of the ones that actually makes me kind of scared. Not many horror things actually reading-wise make me scared, but this one I was like, whoa! And it's because of what happens. This is a book with stakes. This is a book with consequences, and it's a book that goes there. And I love it for that. I really do. And I think it's thematically rich. I think it's entertaining. I have a great time. Also, I guess I would like to say, for those who maybe have different horror tastes, I love character-driven horror. It's my favorite, which typically means its pacing is more irregular. But I tend to find that when it's done well, the payoff is immeasurable for me. And that's just the case for me and most Stephen Graham Jones, including this one. So, yeah, because I think these caveats would also stand for the Indian Lake trilogy, because the pacing there can be irregular as well. When it's action-packed, it's action-packed. But sometimes you're traveling with some characters till you get there. And continuing on, it does look like maybe half my list is horror. I'm not a horror reader, really, but I love the horror I've been picking up. Who's to say? I found that I think I was rereading a lot of my fantasy this year, and I really did enjoy a lot of the science fiction I picked up, but they more ended up on my surprises list. But when I was following my heart, the horror, it made it here. So next up is a Victor LaValle, another favorite author of mine, The Devil in Silver. Ugh. It's just when people read Stephen King, and I want to reading Stephen King, but I just don't. That's how I feel reading The Devil in Silver. It's very character-driven. It's very slow-paced. Both things are Stephen King. But the ending of this one, you wonder, do you like it or not? And I think I've landed on liking it, although that was helped by Buddy reading it with my friend Jocelyn. So we have who I think is Pepper. I don't remember if that's for sure his name. He's a large white man. He gets into a scuffle with some cops, and they put him in an asylum because they don't want to deal. I guess it's not called an asylum. It's a mental institution in New York City because they don't want to deal with the paperwork because they're not getting paid overtime as cops. And what turns from a 72-hour observation period becomes a much bigger deal than our main character suspects. There are like kind of supernatural tinges, but it's also primarily about the horror of institutions that are not given the funding and resources they need to do their jobs and what happens as a result. The community of individuals in here is so vibrant. I love all of them. It's hard because you read this and your first instinct is wrongfully put here. He should not be here, so the place is evil. But also you're meeting these characters who obviously do need to be here, and where else would they go? And then you get to meet some of the orderlies, and I think it's playing with a book that I've never read before, but it's mentioned in this. That's a classic about these types of institutes. And I just had such a good time. And it does one of those classic things, and Victor LaValle does this all the time. So, like, really should I have been surprised, where I, like, make it 2/3 of the way through, and I'm like, suddenly it's a different story than I anticipated it being. But I was okay for it, but I just didn't know where it was going. Like, I was be around the halfway point and be like, this feels like it should be the end of the book. And this happens every time I read a Victor LaValle. Like, every time. And then he surprises me, and we have new twists and turns. And yeah, I think the ending is, in hindsight, a really good place. I don't know where else I would have wanted it to go. But it's a very character-driven, meandering, paced horror. But it's unsettling. And if you love character-driven horror, you gotta pick it up because it's got such a great ensemble cast. And they all get point of views, and I really love Victor LaValle's voice for this. Not just his writing voice, but he does the audio narration as well. The next horror is The Good House by Tananarive Due. I finally read a Tananarive Due novel, and it was great. It was great. And I'm not just saying that because the main character's name is Angela. No, although that is a feature. That is a perk for me. It's just great. I love haunted house books. I love possession stories. I love creepy ghosts and histories to be unpacked. I love families getting to deal with their stuff. All of that is in this book. It is so good. I like the ending. Anyone who doesn't like the ending, let's discuss. I have a whole dissertation on why this is the perfect ending. Okay? I love this book. I can't say a lot about it. It's long, but it doesn't feel long. Robin Miles is the narrator, so also amazing for me. But I loved physically reading this. I loved listening to it. I loved doing it both at the same time. It took over my last week of October. I had so much fun reading this book. It is tropey. It is campy, but it's also got a lot to say. And I think it's got a lot to say in ways you wouldn't expect. Because it's not like it could easily just be about race. But it's really not. It's about so much more than that. And yeah, I love it. So good. Excited to read more Tananarive Due. Got some short story collections. I got the Reformatory on deck. I am excited. It was a blast. The next one is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden, which did I think this would make it on this list? No, I did not. And there's definitely, as we get down this list, there's recency bias. I read this in November. Yes, I did. But, like, hear me out. I read half of it in a day. And I didn't need to. I was actively finding things to do to keep reading this story. And it is so many of my anti-buzzwords, and yet it works. So that just, like, already shows you how strong this book is for me. It's World War I historical fantasy. Okay, I don't like that on just at its face value. Mainly because, and I talked about this in my wrap-up, I don't typically like how people write about the Great Wars. I don't think they capture the horrors in a way that doesn't also romanticize and glorify the soldier. And not that we shouldn't be like soldiers, they put their lives out there. They did a lot of heroic things, but I think it also can take away from what they were forced to deal with, if that makes sense. And that was done so well here. Like, when you were on the front lines in the World War I scenes here, it is gross. It is hard. It is cold. It is soul-sucking. And similarly, One of the main characters is a nurse, and you learn about her relationship to it. You get to see them triaging in real time. And I've read World War I historical medical side, and I didn't like that. And this worked really well for me. So just like in terms of its setting, it did great. The characters, this was way more character focused than I anticipated. And it's also recovery from trauma, which I know. I love that. I love that character journey. What can I say? Got a lot of trauma, like watching other people get over it or at least work through it. And that happens here for so many of our characters. And also, I love interpersonal relationships. I love connections between people. This book is so focused on that and the importance of that and how it links to memory and how it links to healing and how it leads to new beginnings. Your past connections, your future connections, your current connections, what holds you back. Oh, it was done really well and really subtly. I enjoyed it a lot. The romance moments were really good for me. I loved the voices of the characters. I love, again, I just cannot express enough how much I love the respect it has for the time period. Especially after reading the author's note. Like, that intersection of industrial warfare and, like, the entering the 20th century I never really could visualize that contrast until I read this book. And I think it just did such a good job. So props. So many props. And then also just Catherine Arden doing her normal thing of like, and then what happens when these folk monsters, these folk stories intersect with industrial warfare. And that was really cool and unsettling and horrifying. So like, this is a fantasy book. You would sell this to a fantasy reader. But it's a little more folk horror for me. Like, it's kind of like I love The Bear and the Nightingale, and I love the horror elements of The Bear and the Nightingale. So it was really good, really surprising. Like, I could have put it on my surprises list, but I think it's one of my best books of the year. Like, I did look for it when I was at a bookstore this weekend. I was like, is there a copy? Can I get it? There wasn't one there. But I looked. And then the last one, I didn't rank stuff, but I'm gonna be real. This is my favorite thing I've read all year. And we're going to start by saying it's the Verkosigan saga. But I will give a favorite book in it. And that'll be the one I've read most recently, The Civil Campaign. I've read a lot of Verkosigan this year. Like, I think I'm on book 12.1, maybe 13. I'm somewhere in there. And before that, I had read the first 3. So I've read like 9-ish Verkosigan things this year. I am having a great time, okay? I have been searching for a long sci-fi backlist series that would meet my tastes, and I didn't even know what that would be. And this is just, it's so good. The sum is so much greater than the parts, but the parts are still so sturdy and strong and fun. I don't even really love the main character of this series, and I'm all in. Miles Verkosigan, not my favorite character of all time. At some points, I think he's a detriment. I'm like, dude, what are we doing? He is the creator of most of his problems and most of the problems we have to solve in the book. But I've seen him grow so much. And Civil Campaign was so rewarding. I was kicking my feet. I was laughing. I was having such a good time. I had insomnia one night, so I was able to actually just read the book and like kind of escape my insomnia, which doesn't happen to me very often. Like, you'd think if you have insomnia, it's easy to read, but for me, it's really not. I really just try to sleep because I have things to do. And I am just having the best time. The payoff of being with this cast of characters, of being in this world that has always been so fleshed out, but like I finally feel like I'm an expert-ish on this world. Like, not really, but like I've been to so many planets. I've seen so much tech. I've seen the politics. I am having so much fun. So, yeah, Verkosigan as a whole, my favorite book is probably A Civil Campaign, which I just read, which is like, it's called A Comedy of Manners. It's very like if Regency romance was in space. Amazing. Truly phenomenal. Like, so good. I mean, one day I will do a Should You Reads. I know someone has asked me for that on a previous video. It's just like, at this point, I feel like I should just finish it and then do the Should You Reads. But should you read it? I mean, their stories are episodic. You don't have to like actually be that invested. And I would start with Shards of Honor. And you can actually read the first 2, which is Shards of Honor and Barriar, and they're their own little kind of contained duology. And I think you'll get a real strong sense of what Bejoled's doing. She's doing a lot of camp, a lot of adventure, a lot of actual heavy themes and nuanced discussions all together. And, like, it's similar to Hobb, except Hobb, I would say, does themes 60-40. Like, 60% themes and, like, character stuff, and, like, 40%, like, we're doing things. I think here it's kind of the inverse. We're doing a lot of stuff. It's a lot of campy, fun adventures, and then the theme stuff is definitely there, but it's, like, not the focus. But the human experience is truly being explored. My friend Roger's been reading it, and he's like, man, normally I don't want to engage with the themes, but, like, I'm here thinking about the themes because they're so human. Like, yeah, we're on different planets. We have different tech. We cannot actually relate to people who live on Barayar, but also some of the issues are just so human. You can't help but connect your own dots and have your own opinions about the circumstances. It's masterful. I'm so happy that I've been reading it. The community reading experience has also been amazing. It's been one of the best impromptu chill buddy reads I've had in my Discord server. I'm going to be sad when it's over, but I'm just so excited that I have so much Bejoled to read. Like, so much. I'm so excited. So those are my best. That was my best of the year. Like I said, Wind of Truth was probably somewhere, but, like, whatever. I'll talk about Wind of Truth when I finish it, and that'll happen when it happens, because it's a big boy. It's a big boy, and I'm not rushing it for no video. So yeah. Let me know your best of the year. Even if you like to wait till the new year, what have you read that's the best so far? I would love to know that. If you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here. I don't know. I mean, we've done so many of the emojis for these books, because these are kind of some of my favorites. But let me look real quick. Maybe a bunny for Jackal Up Wives. Like, I know it's not the same, but we could do that. I feel like I haven't done that for a while. Or you could just pick your own emoji based off the book you agree with on this list. I will allow that as well. Otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!